Okay, I think we're live now. Okay, we are live now. Okay, go ahead and do introductions.
All right. Hi, I'm Marisol Cisneros.
I'm Mikkel Price.
And I'm Gary Dunn.
Okay.
I think we're going to start with Marisol giving her speech first.
Yep. All right. So, all right. When I was younger, I would look around and little by little, I saw all of my friends' parents get a divorce. It was such a common thing, and yet I always told myself that it would never happen to me, that my family was different. However, during my senior year of high school, my parents came to the decision to end their marriage and get a divorce, and just like that, my father left. That following year, I left for college. Whenever I would come home, I would notice drastic changes and differences between me and my younger siblings, especially me and my youngest sibling. When my parents divorced, I was 17 years old, and so I had most of my raising pretty much completed. However, my youngest sister was only 4 years old when my parents separated, and so she did not have the privilege of having a father in the home for most of her childhood. While I was home, I would notice many differences. I would notice behavioral differences, such as my sister throwing temper tantrums up until she was about 10 years old, and emotionally, she would break down whenever my mom had to leave. She even slept with my mom in the same bed until about 12 years old. Socially, she had a hard time making friends, and academically, she just straight out struggled. True, this is just my experience, but unfortunately, it's a much more common story than it really should be. Right now, there is a decline of children who live with two parents in the home. According to the PEW Research Center, in 1960, 88% of children lived with two parents at home. However, in 2017, it was reported that only 69% of children live with two parents, and out of those, only 46% of children live with both of their biological parents. That being said, children living in a single-parent home has been on the increase, 9% in 1960, and in 2014, 26%. Looking at those numbers, you may think, so what? It's not like the role of fatherhood is important anyway. You see it in the media whichever way you look. The role of the father is seen as nothing more than someone who gets in the way of family life, someone who's lazy, dumb, and incompetent. In the New York Times, one reporter shares an experience. He said, one evening, after watching Homer Simpson wreck the family car at a monster truck rally and plunge on a skateboard into Springfield Gorge, my 6-year-old son asked me, why are dads on TV so dumb? Now, why has our society come to bash on fathers so much? They're so important. There are so many advantages that children can experience by having a father figure at home. Parents as Teachers explains these benefits. There have been many studies that show how an active father can help in the social-emotional development of young children. Having a father around establishes emotional stability and secure attachment. Children having quality time with their fathers also helps them have better self-esteem, social confidence, and life skills. They are also less likely to be depressed. Having an involved father also helps the intellectual development of their children. For example, the fathers that are more involved with their children at a young age have children that tend to have a higher IQ and perform better academically. According to these things, we can see that children need fathers. Looking at the benefits, one cannot deny the important role that fathers play. We should not be willing to settle when we know just how good children can have it. During the 2014 UN Commission on the Status of Women, the importance of fatherhood was addressed by Dr. Timothy Rarick and Laura Bunker. They spoke about the importance of having engaged fathers. They explained, to father a child, unlike to mother a child, typically refers to a biological act, and men today do not seem to have much of a problem in that regard. But it is difficult for a man to be a father. To be a father, rather than merely to father, means to give a child guidance, instruction, encouragement, care, and love. Fatherhood, the state of being a father, is declining to a remarkable degree because so many fathers no longer live with their biological children. In this address, they had talked about things that we can do on a more individual level, especially fathers. One of those ideas was for fathers to be more one-on-one with their children and to have one-on-one discussions about basic things in life, such as school, peers, hobbies, and their hopes and their fears. Men, let's raise the bar. Let's prove that you really do have something meaningful to offer, because you do. Women, let's spread the word about the importance of men and fathers in the lives of our children. By doing this, we will be able to increase the quality of a child's life, one child at a time. Like Mother Teresa said, never worry about numbers. Help one person at a time, and always start with the person nearest you. Thank you. The end.
Very good.
That was great.
Okay.
right.
Even though we loved your speech, we're now supposed to play devil's advocate, I think. Anyway,
Right.
we're supposed to see if we can bring up opposition. So let's begin that. Oh, one question I had before I started. Did you look up or try and find any laws that had any bearing on this subject at all?
One thing that I did notice with like laws that were coming out with the not regarding fathers as being as important was the responsibility that comes into play with adoption and abortion. For example, in many states right now, a woman can abort a child without the say of the biological father. And also, it's becoming more common that a woman can put her child up for adoption as well without the father's consent. And so it kind of just shows that society doesn't view fathers as important, and that they don't, that their say isn't as valued.
Okay. Now my opposition question. Let's see here. You know, I know of several men that I think are very good men who did grow up without fathers. So what is the difference, or what is their story? For instance, well, I'll just put one out here that we all know. Dallin Oaks didn't grow up with a father. And so what is different about them now, let's say that, than if they really had had a father while they were growing up? Are they any worse off now than that?
So whenever we look at statistics, we have to think about the majority. So there will be cases when a child that grows up without a father, they can do just what, like you said, Elder Oaks. I have no doubt in my mind that he is a great man. But with all of these studies, it shows that a child statistically is better off, whether that be financially or the things that I had remembered was that his mother, because he didn't grow up with a father, I'm sure she had to work a lot, so that then didn't allow as much time for him to be with that parent. And so with a father in the home, there is also more time that a child can be with their parents in general, whether that be the mother or the father, because both parents are equally as important, and both parents play an important role. And so in regard with like Elder Oaks and wonderful in the Family Proclamation, we do see how they talk about how and help. And so in situations as such, I'm sure maybe his grandfather or uncle were also present, which can play a role. It just depends on the situation by individual case.
Okay. Mikkel, do you have a question?
I do have a question. So obviously you shared the statistics that they need to have the father's involvement. So I guess my question is more specified towards how do you encourage a father to be with the current divorce rates and individuals' ability to choose what they want to be, whether they want to be involved or not, kind of thing. How do you encourage, in that kind of a society today, a father to be more involved, especially if they don't have a desire necessarily to continue involvement with their family? What are things that can be done, or help that kind of a situation?
I have always thought that knowledge is power. And so I think if we educate young men, especially before they start to have children, in just the role that they can play in children's lives, that we will see a decline in single parent homes, especially single mothers, and fathers leaving the household. I think once you know that you have value and that you are important and that you do play this role, that it kind of gives you more of a, I guess, sense of belonging, and it would help for them to stay. And so with the education for young men, I think it could also help for them to know, like, if they are to have premarital sexual relations, to know that it is a possibility to have children, and then that they do have that responsibility. And so I think just helping them be more aware of what they're really getting into.
So what if once there is a divorce and a child has really good access to their fathers, let's put it that way. In other words, they have a lot of visitation. They can go, every weekend or every other weekend, or maybe once or twice during the week, and to their father's home and get active participation from their fathers. Wouldn't that be just as good almost as being in the home with a father and a mother present?
Yeah, like, so having those visitation rights and being more involved is definitely the better circumstance of just having to not have a father figure at all in the household. But it doesn't, it isn't as good as it could be than to have the father there 24/7, or just whenever they would be able to be there. So, for example, one of the things that children are able to increase in is, for example, their gross motor development. So whenever, for example, you have your typical story of, like, when a dad comes home and the child runs up to the dad and they kind of horseplay and they rough play for maybe like a few minutes. So that may seem unimportant or not as I don't know, as significant to someone looking at it on the naked eye, but those things help with being able to control aggression and being able to control emotions. And it just has a whole lot of different things that a child is learning in that rough play that usually only happens between a father and child interrelationship. And so, yeah, it would be nice for a child to experience that, like, only on the weekends. But imagine if a child could have that practice every day. And so it's just like the piano. If you practice every other weekend, yeah, sure, like, eventually you'll get it. But how much better and how much more will your performance be if you could practice every day? And so having a father in the home every day will add that added benefit.
Very good. Good answer. I believe it that way. I just had to ask. And you got me with the piano, because that's my profession. So there you go. Anyway, Mikkel, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that was really good. That was awesome.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Do you want to go next, Mikkel, or you want me to? I don't care.
I would love to go next. I need to get the nerves out of my system.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait,
okay.
I have a question real quick. For the peer review form, could I get your email address first?
Oh, yeah.
Are you supposed to email us the peer review form? Is that?
Well, just on this form, it just has my name and then my classmate's name and then my classmate's email address. So.
Okay. I guess I never did send out this form to everybody, but I actually have a little thing here that has everybody's phone number and everybody's email and everybody's location and everybody's everything from our group. And I made this up way back in the beginning, and maybe I didn't email them out, but it'd be nice, I guess, if I could have, because then everyone would have all that information.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But
Yeah,
if you want,
if you want to email it, that'd be great.
well, it says you need it, and so I guess I can give it to
Okay.
you if you want to write it down.
Okay.
You ready?
Or we could just say it really quick.
Okay. Gary R. Dunn Sr., which is GaryRDunnsr @gmail.com.
Gary. Wait, can you repeat that? Sorry.
GaryRDunnsr @gmail.com. And it's all together. I mean, I separated it, but it's all together.
And then you, Mikkel?
Okay, and then mine's McKellestirling @gmail.com. So McKellestirling @gmail.com.
All right, thanks.
And then my actual last name right now is Price, my married last name. So and then Marisol, what's yours?
So it's my first and last name. So MARISOL C and then CISNEROS @gmail.com.
Okay, I'm gonna spell that back to make sure I got it. MARISOL CCISNEROS.
Correct.
All right, so are we good? Okay, I'll go ahead and start then. All right. Religious freedom is something we can all agree upon has played a critical role in America's history. We could even go as far as to say it is one of the foundational elements that brought about the development and creation of this great nation and government. Our First Amendment focuses on that religious freedom and our individual rights to believe, speak, and act as we choose, its purpose being to protect us in those rights. Let me introduce you to Colonel Bohannon, a highly decorated and experienced combat pilot in our U.S. Air Force, who has chosen to focus the last 20 years of his personal career on the protection and support of our nation. He has recently found himself in a fight to protect those very rights for himself. One of his subordinates, who happens to be homosexual, prepared to retire, and standard gifts, awards, and honors that are presented at such a time were placed on Colonel Bohannon's desk for signature. He gladly signed each document. However, being a practicing Christian, Colonel Bohannon felt he could not sign a completely unofficial and optional document, a certificate of spouse appreciation. He felt in signing that document, he showed support and endorsement for same-sex marriage, which he did not agree with. In an attempt to find balance concerning his right to live according to his religious beliefs and the request to sign this optional document, Colonel Bohannon approached both his chaplain in the military and his military JAG attorney. During this process, a two-star general advised that he would gladly sign the document himself, which seemed the perfect solution for all involved. The airman's spouse received the certificate, and Colonel Bohannon was able to live according to his religious beliefs. However, upon learning that Colonel Bohannon was not the one who signed the document, the airman filed a formal equal opportunity complaint against him, claiming discrimination towards his sexual orientation. This led to Colonel Bohannon fighting to not only keep his career intact, but his future opportunities. We have seen many cases similar to this as individuals seek equality for themselves. However, are we creating that equality when we force an individual to act on something they do not believe? As policy and lawmakers, we look to you to help in creating and protecting that equality for each of us. It is critical that you look not only at current issues, but at the long-term effects that policy and laws will have on individuals and their personal rights. In 2015, when the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, redefining marriage completely, individual rights of equality were the focus. but has it really moved us towards more equality or opened the door for repression of religious freedom? Over time, will we continue to see hundreds of more examples such as Colonel Bohannon's brought before our court systems? Through research, religious freedom has been found to greatly enhance a nation's economic prosperity. Connections have been found between higher levels of religious freedom and higher levels of per capita income. The freedom we have to choose what we believe and how we will live our lives is what drives us as individuals, whether religious or not. The Pew Research Center reported that the religiously unaffiliated now account for 23% of the adult. This still means that 77% of adults affiliate themselves religiously in some manner. If we want to strive for equality, we need to respect these individual affiliations. As in Colonel Bohannon's case and many others like it, we can see that it is possible to find a solution to allow differing individuals' beliefs to coincide. However, if one side is determined to continually force the other to live according to their beliefs, where is the equality in individual rights? Again, as policy and lawmakers, we ask you to protect our religious freedoms, not just for the protection of us as individuals, but more importantly, for the continued success and growth of this, our great nation, the United States of America. That's it.
Very good. Gee, you're even under 4 minutes.
Depends on how fast I talk.
Yeah, how nervous you get.
Okay, religious freedom, interesting subject. Okay, let's see what kind of a question I can come up here with. Now, if a person goes, for instance, let's say a same-sex couple that wants to get married goes into a cake shop and is waiting for to order a cake, and they're watching the couple in front of them, which is a heterosexual marriage, and they order a cake and they get the whole thing set up with a man and a woman on top and everything with the owner of the cake shop, and they establish all is going to happen. Now it's their turn to go in, and they go in, say there's 2 men there, and they want to order the cake for their wedding, and they start talking to the cake owner and saying, asking for him to find 2 men that they can put on top of the cake and everything. And the owner of the shop says, I'm sorry, but my religious beliefs won't let me make a cake for your situation. How is that equal? How is that right? Because now he did it with the person before, and now he's not going to do it with those people. How can that be right?
That is a great question, and that's actually an awesome example because that's an actual example that has happened. But when it comes to that equality, that's the whole base, right? The foundation is where there's this fight over, is this equal or is this fair kind of a thing. And just as I talked about in the speech, when it comes down to religious freedom, there's a lot more attached to that, like in our First Amendment, right? That gives us the right to believe, to speak it in the ways that we choose. And as the business owner, they have just as much right in our free economy to run their business according to their desires. And there are other people that are perfectly okay to provide, like in the case of a wedding cake, to provide a wedding cake for a couple that is maybe a same-sex couple, right? And so if we try and force this shop owner to make the cake for this same-sex couple, in a way, we're taking away his freedom to run his business in the way that he chooses, in the way that he believes and wants to live his life. And in that particular case of a cake owner, that there was a particular case with that, and he ended up closing his business because of all of the legal repercussions, and deciding, Kate, because of my religious beliefs, that's my only option, is I have to completely close down, which that takes away fairness from him and his equality, and his ability to be able to have those equal rights. Whereas if this couple had been willing to take a reference, for another cake owner or shop owner, to be able to go and get that established for their wedding, and to be respectful of those rights from the shop owner, then we would be able to have the equal rights for both groups. So it comes down to being tolerant of one another and our different beliefs.
Okay. Also, another question is I thought of as you were speaking. So how you talked about the financial relationship between equal rights and things happening in our country. I don't know if I quite understood that. How our economy, when we have more freedom of religion, that financial situations are better. Could you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah. So there was a study done in the past that was focused on that. That focused on not necessarily just the U.S., but other nations, and focused on each nation's level of religious freedom and how that kind of correlated with the economic prosperity of that country. And what they've found is that being able to have that religious freedom, to basically it attaches itself to our individual ability to choose how we will live our lives, and it drives the economy, because as individuals, our desire to progress and to become better, and to better ourselves and our family situations and things like that, are greatly affected by our ability to feel like we are free to live the lives that we choose to live. And so when you have a nation where they suppress that religious freedom and people are forced into a certain way of belief, it really dampens that, I guess you could call it that entrepreneurial spirit, or that drive that we each have as individuals to improve our lives and our families' lives. And so it has a correlation between that economic growth, because people are more susceptible to want to just give up and not deal with the situation. As we talked about that baker, for instance, that, okay, I'm just going to have to, if I can't have that freedom, then I guess I just can't, this isn't an option anymore for me to be able to function this business the way that I want it to. So it definitely has a direct correlation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. My question had to do a little bit more about, you talk about religious freedoms, but I feel like either way, one side or one party loses. And so what do you think can be done in order for there to actually be equality than for one party to feel like they aren't receiving exactly what they want?
That's a perfect question, because that really is like kind of the root of the problem when it comes to this issue. And really what it comes down to is our ability to be tolerant of each other and our differences, and to be willing to accept the fact that not everybody is going to agree with the way that we believe or want to live our lives. And I think that's where it comes down to, as in the example that I brought up, the situation was very much taken care of. They had found a solution so that the same-sex couple, they could get that certificate from this little certificate, and at the same time, this colonel could have live according to what he believed. And so it was something they obviously stressed over and wanted to make it a fair thing between the two. Whereas the other group decided to come back in and say, hey, that's not fair, just because even though we got that initial certificate, you're treating me unfairly because you don't agree with how I'm living my life, kind of thing. It isn't fair, the other person. And so it really comes down to us as a society being willing to be tolerant of one another in those differences, and to let go of situations like that, to know, okay, like, it's okay, they don't necessarily agree with that, but obviously this colonel was supportive to the airmen in that he was wanting to sign everything else and help take care of his retirement in the way that he would any other person. So it in my opinion, it really comes down to, we have to have those laws and things in place to help protect us in equality. And when those things are brought forth, basically to let people know, like, it is fair and equal, and it isn't, pushing this and forcing them to have to shut down or to lose their job or to do these things that's taking away that freedom that this whole country is based on, right? So.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Good. So is everyone finished except for me?
Yeah. So what I was gonna say, I can still listen, except I forgot to tell you, Gary, is that we have the viewing at 11, and so I'm just going to transfer devices from my laptop to my phone, so I can listen to you while I'm in the car, and I'll just have it muted.
Okay. Will you be able to ask me a question while you're in the car?
I think so.
Okay, that's fine.
Here, let me see.
When you're all transferred.
Okay. Okay.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, perfect. All right. We're on the move.
You're on the move. Okay. I'm going to be talking a little bit fast because at the beginning mine was over 5 minutes, and so but still I have to speak fast to get in within my 5 minutes. So anyway, that's just the way it is. So, okay, well, let's begin here. A few years ago, when I was a church leader in my community, I met two couples that lived in the area. After getting to know them, I found out that both were not married, but were living together in a cohabitation relationship. The first couple wanted to have children, and the second couple already had children from each of their prior marriages. After talking to these couples, I suggested that marriage would be a good course of action to help each family. The couple without children considered it and said yes. After some planning, I conducted a backyard marriage with their family and friends. The second couple that had children told me no. Later, I would find out why. It would have made a difference with them, especially with their children. Cohabitation has become a very common way of life for many in our society. It has become what some call the new normal in the adult lifestyle. This type of relationship is so popular that many young adults are cohabiting before marriage in the United States. Almost half of women use this form of union instead of marriage. Many young adults put off marriage because they want financial stability, being able to support a spouse and children. The growth in cohabitation has risen quickly. One research group states that cohabiting unions in the US has reached about 18 million in 2016. Living together while not married has been found to have a good amount of instability. On average, the length of cohabitation is less than 2 years. Sometimes put at risk by the actions of their parents. The decision to cohabit with another partner could be an arrangement that will hurt any child that comes into that union. Children are involved in almost half of cohabitating unions. Of these relationships where a baby is born, as many as 64% dissolve within 5 years. That leaves children living with only one biological parent. The majority of non-marital births are unintended. This also causes instability. Some people, usually men, can't handle the situation and leave. The breaking up and rejoining of cohabitation often continues. With women, as many as 1/4 become serial cohabitors. With men, it is even higher at about 1/3. Because of this, children may suffer many significant problems during their growing years. They may show higher levels of psychological, social, and health problems. This can include poor grades in school and a greater risk of child abuse. Financial difficulties can be prominent. With my example of the second couple, I later found out that the marriage reluctance was financial. By getting married, their income would have suffered. As I remember, the problem had to do with alimony and/or child support. I think it also had to do with marriage tax penalties. The marriage tax penalty is connected to the federal income tax. The total tax bill of a couple can rise as a result of getting married and fighting their taxes jointly. This especially happens with those in the lower income tax bracket and with those with equal incomes. Problems can also be caused with the earned income tax credit. The combined incomes can put couples into a higher category and out of range of this credit. These laws are focused on the individual and not on the family. If one or both individuals are receiving alimony from a previous marriage, they could lose this income by becoming married. With cohabitation, depending on the state, people may continue to receive alimony or have it reduced. Some couples receive alimony because their cohabitation is not a legal union and therefore has not been reported. If changed, this could alter their income. Child support could also be changed with remarriage. We can teach our families and friends about the importance of marriage. We need to change laws that discourage marriage and penalize financially those who do marry. On the federal level, we can contact our senators and representatives about laws that affect family. The state level includes the discussion of laws concerning alimony and child support for women and children. We can talk to our state legislators and invite them to enact family laws and policies. New pro-family laws can be written. Bad laws should be changed or discarded. We can also join organizations like United Families International and Family Research Council. We can attend meetings and help formulate agendas. These organizations work at all levels to support families, including the international level. On the local level, we can try to organize community awareness programs that educate youth and individuals on the threats of cohabitation to future marriage and children. Most people do not know these dangers. Education in the public schools could become organized to teach these principles. Writing and producing public service announcements to be broadcast on radio and television, educating against cohabitation would be a big project, but this would be the best hope for our future and children. Okay, that's it.
Very good. I guess my question has to do with divorce. So one of the main arguments I've heard for cohabitation is that it is a way to secure a relationship before you marry, and so people feel that they'll less likely to get a divorce if they've lived, know their habit to get married. So right off the back. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. Most people that do go into cohabitating relationships feel that way. They think, rather than go into the whole marriage situation, let's just try it out and let's go and cohabit.
Like
Actually, they don't. Yeah, they don't say it that way, but they usually it actually starts out with a relationship beforehand, and then they decide that, oh, we're not going to get married, and so let's just stay together here for a while and see how it works out, like you said, for the trial run. The thing is that even if they do get married, the divorce rate of that situation becomes really a lot larger than even the normal marriage divorce rate. I think part of that problem is that when they decide in the beginning to have a relationship together, they have not entered it into they have not made commitments really with each other. They're just sort of doing their thing. And so once they get into a marriage relationship, they feel also, well, they could just do a relationship with someone else, and because the commitment really doesn't matter. It's not important to have a commitment. We just do what we want to and when we want to. And so it just doesn't work out that way. That's sort of the mindset of those who enter into that type of relationship, that they can do what they want when they want to do it and not have to make commitments to the other person. And so it really sets up a negative start, let's put it that way, a negative start to any relationship, to not have a commitment that you're going to be exclusive and that you're going to try and do it for a long range period of time. And so it just really messes up almost the whole eventual process whether they get married or whether they don't get married, really that whole process is changed completely because of the way they start. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so my question has to do with, is similar to that, but more so concerning, so I have dealt a lot with, gotten to know more Australian culture, and it's interesting to me because in their culture, it's something that has become, I don't know, obviously if you have statistics when it comes to Australia specifically, but it's culturally become a very normal thing for them to cohabitate, to not get married and to have partners, basically, right? And it seems from my interactions with couples, with a lot of couples from Australia, that they're pretty content in that culture, in that it's such a normal thing, and it's viewed as, they seem to view it as, this is my lifelong partner, but that's where they leave it at. They don't necessarily have an interest in turning it into a marriage necessarily. And so I guess if a culture has that mentality of, this is my lifelong partner, then why would marriage be an important step in that culture, I guess?
Now, I don't know specifically about Australian situations. I know there are studies done in a lot of other countries, but I didn't necessarily move in on all that research data. But my question would be, do these people, it's the commitment thing again, these people, they just decide that they're going to get married, and so do they really stay together for the whole period of time? Do they stay together for their entire lifetime? Do they have relationships with other people because they feel that they're not sad? Maybe they don't. But then what happens to their children? That's a big thing with these relationships. If a child is born into these relationships, they've proven that in a lot of cases, and again, it's statistical information, some people grow up fine in those situations, but the majority don't. Now, I don't know in Australia if that works or if it doesn't work, but it just seems to me that the commitment thing would change the way people feel. Even the children that grow up in a situation, you grow up into a family and you find out that, you learn a little bit about marriage as you're growing up, and you find out that your parents really are not married. And does the child wonder? Does the child say, well, why not? Maybe they don't. I don't know. But it would seem like it would just change the whole outlook on the way both the children and the families look at this cohabitating relationship, and could then, I don't know. And I think in more cases than not, ends up a little bit negative than not. Now, again, in other countries, it may not. But I remember reading in the thing about Sweden, where it's sort of the same way over there, that it's actually ends up, if they really look at the research, being a negative thing in the end, even though it looks more normal and it looks like everybody's doing it. But if they really look at the research data, it actually ends up being negative in that case also. I don't remember exactly what the total research shows on that, but I just think that in all cases, no matter where you are, and here in the United States, we may be behind other countries, so to speak, and we're moving in that direction. But all the research here shows that it just gets worse and worse. The serial cohabitating happens often. Like I said, people dissolve here within a short period of time, and then they're on to the next cohabitation situation. And whether children or not are born, the children are always in the worst situation. So I don't know in Australia, maybe you know more about the total end of that situation with their children and everything else.
No, thank you. I think that was awesome.
So do you know people that have been? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I have one more question, kind of going off of Mikhail's. That's a little bit more on the international level. What do you think can be done to help those families that would like to become married, but because of the marital laws in their country, or just like the expenses that they just can't afford to become married, how would you suggest that we could help those people?
That's a very good question. I don't know, because you know, you can't go change laws in the different countries. You know, I guess they could work towards that. I don't, but it's probably a lot harder. My guess is to change laws in some of those countries even than it is in our country. Um, and you're right, the financial situations occur. I know it was many years ago, but on my mission in Brazil, we found couples that were living together. Then we didn't even have the name cohabitation. I don't remember it even existing. But anyway, before, if they were interested in the gospel, before they could get baptized, they had to get married. A Catholic background. But we just had to help them go through help them as missionaries try and find ways to go through those expenses, because it was expensive for them to get married in most cases. And so changing those laws would be very difficult, but you just have to help people understand the importance of it, of becoming married, and that they just need to do extra things probably to be able to get to that point to where they can get married. So for instance, if they wanted to be baptized, they could be baptized, or whatever the situation may be in any country, even if they weren't members of the church. If they can see the value, it'd be teaching the value of marriage, and how it lasts longer in many cases than cohabitation, and that how children grow up a lot better in each of those situations, and get them to understand that there's a lot of value in doing that. So they need to go through whatever they need to get where they can become married.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
Good
well,
job, guys.
I thought you guys did really good on
oh
being
yeah,
the
everyone
speeches.
did really well. Thank you very much, and we're done now. We
Nice.
can
See you
relax.
next week then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can turn off the live
Thanks,
here.
Greg.
So I was with